I would say the thing that probably has surprised me most relative to what I thought a month and a half ago. A month and a half ago, I thought I'd learned that science thought this didn't depend much at all on the climate, because it was a coronavirus, not a flu virus, and that we didn't think the climate mattered much. And I thought that if you looked at developing countries, there wasn't room for any social isolation. Wasn't any room for any social isolation. There wasn't going to be any ventilators, any testing, anything. And so it was really going to be the apocalypse. And there are places in Ecuador and some places in Brazil where that's been the case. But, on the official numbers, where you said the United States was at 200, India is still below 20. Now, those numbers are probably wrong, but I don't think people think they're wrong by a factor of 10. So I've been very surprised that there isn't more of this in the developing world, that Africa is not being devastated. Is that because it is, but amidst all the chaos, people aren't doing the right count and not reporting it? Is that because it's coming and these things just take longer to play out than you think? Or is that because there's something beyond the fact that the populations are more youthful that I should have appreciated more 6 or 7 weeks ago?
I am, look, anyone who says anything different is crazy, because we don't know. So we don't know what the seasonality of this thing is going to be. And we simply don't know. There are reasons to think on both sides. But having said that, we should also remember that the seasonality of the 1918, 1919 flu was such that, you can't count on seasonality in the first year for a whole variety of reasons. Seasonality is not just temperature, it's also temperature, that decreases the spread. It doesn't decrease it that much, but then you have the decrease combined with the fact that a lot of people are immune, which brings the R naught below 1, I mean. So I'm not a big believer in the seasonality issue this summer. I do think that there are 2 other things that you haven't mentioned that are probably relevant here in developing countries. First of all, I do think that there is some element of slower there. You have to differentiate countries. So a place like Ethiopia, where literally 92, 93% of the population is rural. I mean, they've got one big city, Addis, and everything else is tiny. The second biggest Ethiopian city in the world is Washington, D.C. So there's a lot of countries like that where, it's like you're not going to see it, and it's not going to spread, except maybe on, the truck routes, which made HIV famous. That's different in a place like Nigeria, which has these mega cities of, 15 to 20 million people, and you would expect big spread in those countries. The second thing, as you mentioned, it's not just that they have a very skewed younger population, they also have a very skewed population when it comes to the exact comorbidities that really exacerbate this thing. So no one knows exactly why it's hypertension, diabetes, obesity, and COPD. I will tell you my hypothesis, and it can't be anything more than a hypothesis. This is less about lung damage and more about about vascular harm. It's about the inside of the blood vessels. So a lot of these reports you've been seeing over the last couple of weeks of clotting, that is, something that happens. And what is key to that is, what's the vessel doing? How intact is the vessel? How well can the vessel handle this abnormal clotting? And so diseases that cause problems with the vasculature seem to be the ones that have a high. you don't get that much in of those things. While that everyone talks about the diabetes level in developing countries and obesity high, it's still, you know, tiny compared to us. I mean, even, you know, a major difference between us and Sweden is probably the level of obesity, the level of diabetes, the level of hypertension. So I think those things.
For the non-medical, just to make sure I understood, you referred to the stuff we've heard all about clotting. That's the same stuff as the stuff about strokes.
Yes, they're related.
People
Exactly.
have strokes down the road. That's the same. That's the same idea. As
so let me give you a little science behind this, because it actually ties into research I did 40 years ago as a graduate student at Oxford. So antibodies, when they collect on foreign organisms, can activate the immune system through cytokine storm. But another thing that antibodies do when they collect is activate a clotting system, because it's thought that this is key to sealing off. So they can activate complement, and complement is a clotting system that's of proteins that are in the blood, separate from the platelets that you have. My research way back when was about how antibodies actually activate. It was that interaction that I focused on. And there's a lot of thinking that that complement system is going haywire. So the hyperimmune response is less a hyperimmune response that you see in these CAR T anti-cancer treatments, and more a different hyperimmune response. That main downstream effect is activating the complement system that's leading to the strokes and the toes and some of those other things. So that may in fact be relevant to, you know, lack of intact vasculature. I'm giving you a hypothesis since no one has any proof, but I will say, at least among the Penn team, the doctors at Penn who are studying this, that does seem that there's a very strong reason to believe it, not the least of which is that the other hyperimmune reactions, we don't seem to see a lot of the cytokines up that you would normally see in the cytokine storm that of some of the other diseases. And you do see a big depletion of the complement, which goes along with the hypothesis I just gave you.